I thought I was overreacting. That's what I kept telling myself as I stared at my phone, rereading the text message for the fifth time. My boss, well, my new boss, technically, since he'd just been promoted above me, had sent me a request so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. He wanted me to house his wife, toddler, and dog for an entire week in January. Let me back up. I've worked at this company for almost 8 years. I've seen a lot of nonsense. But Bob, I'll call him Bob, takes the cake. He's the CEO's golden boy. Our CEO, who I've nicknamed Dick for obvious reasons, thinks Bob can do no wrong. It started when Bob's wife had a baby and became a stay-at-home mom. Dick thought that was the most admirable thing in the world. He promoted Bob on the spot. Suddenly, Bob was allowed to show up late, leave early, take naps at his desk. None of it mattered. He was a family man. Meanwhile, I had a baby too, and what did I get? A silent demotion. No raise in 4 years. Just a pat on the head and a reminder to be grateful I still had a job. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just gritted my teeth and kept working. Because that's what women in corporate America do, right? We smile and nod while the men get rewarded for breathing. Anyway, a year ago, Bob and his family had to move across the country for some family emergency. And wouldn't you know it, another promotion. He went from being under me to being at my level. And then a couple months ago, he got promoted again. Now he outranks me, so imagine my surprise when I got that text. He didn't even ask nicely. It was a demand wrapped in a thin layer of politeness. Hey, would you be able to host my wife, toddler, and dog for the week of January 12th? We're coming back to town for a work thing, and I thought since you have that big house, oh, and if that doesn't work, I'll ask the company to pay for my accommodations. Gobsmacked. That's the only word for it, utterly gobsmacked. I've spent the last 4 years being overlooked, underpaid, and silently demoted for having the audacity to give birth while still doing my job perfectly. And now this guy who slept through meetings and got promoted for being a dad, wants me to house his family, for free. While he stays somewhere else, presumably at a hotel paid for by the company, I didn't respond right away. I took a screenshot, sent it to my husband, and then took an aspirin. Because I had a meeting with Dick in an hour and I knew he would bring it up. He always does. Bob is his pet project, and anything Bob wants, Dick makes happen. As I walked to the conference room, I thought about all the comments people have made over the years. You're so emotional. Is it that time of the month? Maybe you're just not a team player. I've heard it all, and I've learned to keep my mouth shut. But this time I couldn't just smile and nod. I had to say something. But what do you say when the system is rigged against you? When HR is a joke? When everyone knows that complaining about the golden boy will only get you labeled as difficult? That meeting with Dick was a disaster. He spent the first 10 minutes talking about how Bob was such a dedicated father, how the company needed to support him, how it was a privilege to help out a coworker in need. I sat there gripping my pen so hard my knuckles turned white. Then he looked at me and said, "So can you do it?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I thought about my mortgage, my daughter's daycare, the fact that I can't afford to quit. I thought about all the times I've been told to be grateful, so I said, "I'll think about it." And Dick smiled. He actually smiled, like he knew he'd won. I walked out of that meeting and straight to my desk. I pulled up my job search because I've been here too long. My normal meter is broken. I've started to believe that this is just how things are, but it's not. This is the problem with staying in toxic jobs too long. You get habituated to the chaos. You start thinking that being asked to host your boss's family is a reasonable request. It's not, it's insane. I haven't responded to Bob yet. I'm still thinking about what to say, but I know one thing, I can't keep doing this. Something has to change. That night, I told my husband the whole story. He looked at me like I was crazy. Tell him no, he said. It's a complete sentence. Easy for him to say. He doesn't work for Dick, but he's right. I need to start saying no. I need to start standing up for myself, because if I don't, this pattern will never end. I'm still looking for a new job. I'm still scared, but I'm also angry. And that anger might be the only thing that gets me out of this mess. To be continued. Later that week, I was scrolling through Reddit trying to distract myself from the knot in my stomach when I stumbled on another story that hit close to home. It reminded me that I wasn't the only one dealing with coworkers who had no boundaries. Some people had it way worse. I've worked at my office for about 9 years. I'm a private person. I believe in a clear separation between work and home. I never, ever talk about my personal life. I'm not ashamed, I just don't like mixing the two. My coworkers love sharing everything about their weekends, their kids, their marriages. They'd try to include me, but I'd always redirect or change the subject. After a while, I became the office enigma. That was fine by me. I'm married. I have twin daughters. I play softball, kayak, and occasionally mountain climb. I keep a Facebook account under a shortened version of my name, Ali instead of Alexandra, and my married name. I thought that was enough to stay hidden. But then Melinda joined the team about a year ago. Melinda is a snoop, not the curious, well-meaning kind, the kind who digs up dirt to hold over people. She spent weeks getting close to everyone, asking innocent-sounding questions, memorizing details, but I never gave her anything. I'd talk about movies, books, the weather. She'd smile and nod, but I could see the frustration in her eyes. Last Friday, she came into work looking like the cat who got the goldfish. At lunch, she announced to the whole open plan office that I am married with 2 daughters, a dog, and a nice house. She listed my hobbies: softball, kayaking, mountain climbing. She even said I have a Facebook page. She couldn't see my private posts, but some of my photos were shared with friends so they weren't completely locked down. She must have used white pages or something to connect the dots. Everyone stared at me. I felt the heat climb up my neck. I didn't say anything, just went back to my desk, but the damage was done. Suddenly, people who had respected my boundaries started treating me differently. They'd ask about my kids, they'd want to see pictures. They'd invite me to family events. And Melinda, she watched me like a hawk waiting for me to slip. I reported her to HR. I explained that she had stalked my online presence, that she had no right to share my private information with the team. HR took it seriously. They said they'd have a talk with her, but that only made things worse. Melinda started spreading rumors that I was hiding something, that I must be ashamed of my life, that maybe I was embarrassed by my husband or my kids. The gossip got so bad that my boss pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay at home. I couldn't believe it. I was the one being investigated now. The second a workplace tells you your family, your guard should go all the way up. I've learned that the hard way. In that office, 3 other people had found out the hard way what happens when you freely share personal information. One guy mentioned he was going through a divorce, and suddenly he was passed over for a promotion because they thought he was unstable. Another woman talked about her son's medical issues, and then her manager started questioning her ability to focus. Melinda used that intel like currency. After the HR meeting, I decided to double down. I went back to being even more private. I stopped eating lunch in the break room. I kept my head down, but I also started documenting everything, every comment, every snide remark, every time Melinda mentioned my kids. I printed out the white pages search result I found in the office printer logs. I saved emails. A few weeks later, I found out that Melinda had been snooping on other people too. One of my coworkers, Hank, discovered that she had looked up his credit score. Another, Lucy, found out Melinda had accessed her medical records through a friend in HR. The whole office started turning on her, but instead of firing her, management just moved her to a different department. She's still there, still snooping, I bet. That story resonated with me because it showed how deeply coworkers can invade your life if you let them. But the next story I read made me realize just how far some people will go to destroy someone they see as a threat. I have chronic pain. I explain it to people like this. Imagine you're constantly at a level 6 or 7 on a 1 to 10 scale of pain, like a pulled muscle that never heals. Some days it's worse, rare days it's better. I use canes when I'm at a 7 or above. I'm physically and legally disabled. I have a handicap placard on my car. All the paperwork is filed with my job in case I ever need accommodations. I work 2 jobs, my full-time one and a part-time one at a newer location closer to home. I love the team there. My boss, Amy, is great. My colleague, Casey, and I are both assistant coordinators. Casey has wanted a promotion for a long time. I don't. Any promotion from my position would be full-time, and I already have a full-time job. I do the part-time gig to pad my savings, and because I like it, being busy helps with my anxiety. Casey, though, saw me as a threat. She thought that because of my disability, I was getting special treatment. She started making comments about how I could do my job just fine, so why did I need the placard? Why did I park in the handicapped spot? Why did I sometimes use a cane when I didn't even seem in pain? I shrugged it off. But then my dad passed away. He was my rock. I took a few days off, came back, and tried to keep going. That's when Casey took things too far. One afternoon, Amy called me into her office. She looked pale. She played a video on her phone. It was me, walking from my car to the store the day before without a cane. Wearing normal shoes, laughing on the phone with my brother. It was shot from a distance, clearly on a cell phone. Casey had followed me on my lunch break. Amy told me that Casey had sent the video to HR, proving that I wasn't really disabled, that I was faking it, that I didn't need the placard, that I was just lazy and entitled. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I explained to Amy that chronic pain isn't constant. Some days I'm better. That day was a good day. I had taken a painkiller and I was able to walk without support. That doesn't mean I'm not disabled. It means I manage. Amy believed me. She said she'd defend me, but HR, they launched an investigation. They asked for my medical records. They questioned my doctors. They interviewed my coworkers. Casey told them I always complained about pain, but then went out and did physical activities. She even said she saw me at a park once, tossing a frisbee. That was months ago, and yes, I was having a good day. The whole process took weeks. I was put on paid leave while they decided. My lawyer sent them a letter. I filed a police report for stalking, but the cops in my county didn't take it seriously. They said it was a workplace matter. In the end, HR cleared me. They said my disability was legitimate, but they didn't fire Casey. They just gave her a warning and moved her to another shift. I had to work alongside her for another month before I finally transferred out. The worst part, after all that, people in the office still looked at me differently. Some whispered that I must have done something to provoke Casey. Others thought I was exaggerating. I heard one woman say, if she can toss a frisbee, she can stand through a shift. I thought about all of that while I sat in my car after the meeting with Dick, my hands still shaking. I realized that no matter how careful you are, no matter how much you try to keep your personal life separate, someone will always find a way to use it against you. The only way to win is to leave, so that's what I started doing. I spent every night updating my resume, sending out applications, taking calls from recruiters in the parking lot. Bob never got his answer. I never responded to his text. A week later, I found out from a coworker that he had asked another colleague, a single guy with a spare room, and that guy said yes. Bob's wife and toddler and dog stayed there for a whole week. The guy later told me that Bob never even thanked him. He just dropped them off and disappeared. I don't work there anymore. I got a job at a smaller company, one where my boss doesn't call me the office mother and doesn't expect me to house his coworkers' families. I still keep my personal life close to my chest. But now when someone asks about my weekend, I just smile and say, quiet. That's all they need to know. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare wasn't over. For the next month, I had to see Casey every single shift. She'd walk past my desk, and instead of the usual forced smile, she'd give me this long, dead-eyed look like she was memorizing my face for a court sketch. The office turned into a whispering gallery. Every time I came back from the bathroom, conversations would stop mid-sentence. People would glance at me and then look away. One Tuesday, I got to my desk and found a sticky note on my monitor. It said, "Real disability or real drama." I didn't know who left it. I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. But I took a picture first. I started keeping a log, dates, times, brief descriptions. On Wednesday, I noticed my ergonomic chair had been replaced with a basic wooden one. I asked Amy about it, and she said maintenance had swapped it by accident, but I knew it wasn't an accident. Casey had a friend in facilities. The HR investigation had cleared me, but that didn't restore my reputation. The whispers said I had a history of exaggerating. Someone in accounting told a mutual friend that HR had only cleared me because I had a lawyer, not because I was actually disabled. I wanted to scream. I wanted to print out every medical record and pin it to the bulletin board, but I knew that would make it worse. I started taking longer routes through the office to avoid Casey. I ate lunch in my car, even when it was 30 degrees outside. I stopped using the handicap placard because I didn't want to give anyone ammunition. That was stupid. I paid for it physically. My pain spiked. I had to take extra medication just to get through the day. My husband begged me to quit, but I needed the money, and the part-time job was the only thing keeping me from losing my mind at my full-time one. The worst moment came on a Friday afternoon. I had just finished a report and was heading to the break room when I saw Casey standing by the water cooler with two other coworkers. She was talking in a low voice, but I caught my name. I didn't stop. I kept walking. But as I passed, I heard her say, "If she can toss a frisbee, she can stand through a shift." The other woman laughed. I felt my face burn. I kept walking. I went straight to Amy's office. My hands were shaking. "I need to transfer out. I can't do this anymore." Amy looked at me for a long moment. She didn't say anything at first. She just nodded slowly. "I'll see what I can do." 2 weeks later, I got the transfer. I moved to a different location across town. It was a longer commute, but I didn't care. I needed to be away from Casey. I needed to be away from the whispers and the sticky notes and the chair swaps. My last day at that office, I walked past Casey's desk without looking at her. She said, "Good luck. Hope your new boss is as easy to fool as Amy." I didn't answer. I just kept walking. The new location was smaller, quieter. No one knew about my disability unless I told them. I didn't tell them. I kept my head down, did my work, and went home. My pain levels settled back to normal, well, my normal. The constant fear of being watched faded, but it never fully disappeared. I still catch myself checking my rearview mirror when I drive. I still hesitate before using the handicap placard. I still feel a knot in my stomach when a coworker asks me how my weekend was. That story gave me chills because it showed that even when you follow every rule, even when you have legal protection, some people will still find a way to make you feel like the enemy. But there's another side to this. A story about what happens when you hide your whole life so well that no one can find you, and then someone finds you anyway. I've worked in my office for 9 years, 9 years. I started as an entry-level assistant and worked my way up to a senior position. And in all that time, I never once talked about my personal life. Not because I'm ashamed of it, I'm not. I'm married to a great guy. I have twin daughters, a dog, a nice house. I play softball, kayak, and occasionally mountain climb. I'm on Facebook, but I use a shortened version of my name and my married name, so I thought it was safe. I believed in a clear separation between work and home. When coworkers asked about my weekend, I'd say something vague like just relaxing and redirect. Most people accepted it. They called me an enigma. I kind of liked that. Then Melinda got hired. Melinda came in last year, and from day one she made it her mission to get close to everyone. At first I thought she was just friendly. She would bring in coffee for the team, ask about people's kids and hobbies, remember everyone's birthdays. I kept my guard up, but I didn't think much of it. Then I started noticing patterns. She would ask very specific questions, not just "How was your weekend?" But "Did you go anywhere fun? And anyone special you spent time with?" When I dodged, she'd smile and move on, but I saw her making mental notes. For weeks, she circled me like a shark. I gave her nothing, no details, no names, no photos on my desk. My work phone was just for work. My personal phone stayed in my bag. I thought I was being smart. I thought my privacy was ironclad. Then came the Friday. Melinda walked into the break room at lunchtime, and she had this look on her face, like a cat that had just swallowed a goldfish and was waiting for applause. She sat down at the table with everyone and announced, loud enough for the whole floor to hear, "I figured out the mystery. Our friend here is married, has twin daughters, a dog, a nice house, plays softball, kayaks, mountain climbs, and she's on Facebook." The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. I felt my face go hot. I didn't scream. I didn't even say anything. I just stared at her. She went on to say how she'd used white pages and cross-referenced my name from the company directory with my shortened Facebook profile and some shared photo albums that weren't private. She was so proud of herself, like she'd cracked a cold case. I stood up, walked out of the break room, and called my husband. He told me to report it to HR. I did. I filed a complaint against Melinda for invasion of privacy and creating a hostile work environment. HR took it seriously. They interviewed everyone, but the damage was done. Suddenly, I was the topic of every conversation. People who had respected my privacy now felt like I'd been lying to them. Some were angry. "Why didn't you tell us you had kids? We've been working together for years and I didn't even know you were married. What else are you hiding?" I didn't have a good answer. I just wanted to keep my work life and home life separate. I didn't think that was a crime, but in that office it made me a pariah. Melinda got a formal warning. She was moved to a different department, but she still works there. Still snoops, I bet. The worst part is I saw firsthand what happens when you overshare at work. 3 months before Melinda was hired, a guy named Hank shared that he was going through a divorce. The boss started giving him the worst assignments, saying he needed to focus. Another coworker, Lucy, told everyone about her son's autism diagnosis. Suddenly she was being passed over for promotions because she had a lot on her plate. I watched all of that. It confirmed my decision to keep my mouth shut. But Melinda didn't care. She thought she was being clever. She thought she was exposing a fraud. All she did was make me feel like I couldn't trust anyone in that building again. I still work there. I can't afford to leave yet, but I've changed my habits. I started using a fake last name on my Facebook. I tightened every privacy setting and I stopped going to the break room altogether. I eat lunch at my desk now with the door closed. I think about that story often, especially when I see people on social media posting about their workplace drama. The second a workplace tells me I'm family, my guard goes all the way up. I've learned that family in a professional setting usually means they can ask you for more. They can dig deeper. They can use your personal life against you, so I stay quiet, I smile, I say my weekend was good, and I keep the rest to myself. Because in my experience, the less they know, the safer I am. And let me tell you about another nightmare that hit the front page around the same time. A woman posted about her boss, let's call him Bob, asking her to host his entire family for a week. Wife, toddler, dog in her house for a week. And he only mentioned asking the company to pay for his accommodations as an afterthought. The audacity was breathtaking. Bob was the CEO's golden boy, a guy who got promoted every time his wife had a baby. When he became a dad, the CEO promoted him. When his wife became a SAHM, the CEO promoted him again. When they had to move across the country for a family emergency, another promotion. Meanwhile, the woman who posted this, she hadn't gotten a raise in 4 years. She'd been silently demoted for having the audacity to have a baby herself. Her work hadn't changed. She was still doing the same job, producing the same results. But Bob got praised as a family man while she got punished for being a mother. She was utterly gobsmacked. She said no in the most polite, professional way possible, but Bob didn't take it well. He went straight to the CEO, who called her into a meeting and asked why she wasn't being a team player. She explained that she didn't have the space, that she had her own family obligations, that it wasn't appropriate. The CEO just looked at her and said, "Bob is a valuable asset. We should support him however we can." She asked him if that support included her not getting a raise for 4 years. The CEO's face went red. He said her situation was different. She asked how. He didn't have an answer. The comments on that post were brutal, but in a supportive way. People were furious. "This is the problem with staying in toxic jobs too long," one wrote. "You get habituated to the chaos and your normal meter breaks. OOP is severely underreacting." Another commenter pointed out the double standard. "Yep, just another crazy woman on the rag. I don't know how many of my husband's friends have said they divorced because their wives were crazy. Last year, one of his friends died, found out he was a cheating pose." So yeah, that excuse is often thrown around. She didn't quit, she couldn't, she had a family to support, but she started documenting everything. Every time Bob was late, every time he missed a deadline, every time the CEO gave him preferential treatment, she sent her documentation to HR, but HR was toothless. They said it was a matter of management discretion. The update came a few months later. The company restructured. Bob got laid off in the first round. Turns out his unreachable behavior and missed deadlines finally caught up with him. The CEO couldn't protect him when the board started asking questions. She got a small raise, not enough to make up for 4 years, but something. She said she was still job hunting, but for now she was staying. That story hit me hard because it reminded me of a situation I saw at my last job. A guy named Marcus, one of the hardest workers I knew, was passed over for a promotion because he seemed too quiet. The person who got it was a loud, backslapping guy who showed up late every day but was always laughing in the break room. Marcus quit 6 months later. Last I saw on LinkedIn, he was running his own successful consulting firm. The loud guy got fired during the next round of layoffs. Some people just know how to play the game even when they're bad at the job. But that story isn't even the most disturbing thing I've seen happen to a coworker. There's one that still keeps me up at night. A woman with chronic pain, she posted about it on Reddit. She explained that she had a condition that put her at a baseline level of pain that most people only feel when they stub their toe. She had canes. She had a handicap placard. She had all the proper documentation filed with her employer. She worked a part-time job in addition to her full-time one, and at that part-time job, she had a colleague named Casey who wanted a promotion. Casey wanted that promotion badly. She saw the woman with chronic pain as a threat even though the woman had made it clear she didn't want the promotion. She had a full-time job, she was just padding her savings and staying busy, but Casey didn't believe her. Casey started watching. She noticed that some days the woman used a cane and some days she didn't. So Casey started taking videos. She filmed the woman walking through the parking lot without her cane. She filmed her at the grocery store bending over to pick up a bag of oranges. She filmed her tossing a frisbee with her kids at the park. Then she brought that footage to their boss, Amy. See, she's faking it. She can toss a frisbee. She can stand through a shift. Amy didn't buy it. Amy was a good boss. She shut it down immediately, but the damage was done. The rumor mill started churning. Casey showed the videos to other coworkers. Suddenly, people who had been friendly started giving the woman the side-eye. One person left a sticky note on her desk that said, "The parking spots are for people who actually need them." The woman went to HR. She filed a complaint. She showed her medical records, her placard, everything. HR took Casey's phone and found the videos. Casey was formally warned, but she didn't stop. She just got more subtle. She'd make comments under her breath. She'd accidentally schedule meetings during times the woman had medical appointments. She'd swap her chair for one that was less ergonomic when she wasn't looking. The woman started taking longer routes through the office to avoid Casey. She ate lunch in her car even when it was 30 degrees outside. She stopped using the handicap placard because she didn't want to give anyone ammunition. That was stupid. She paid for it physically. Her pain spiked. She had to take extra medication just to get through the day. Her husband begged her to quit, but she needed the money. The worst moment came on a Friday afternoon. She was heading to the break room when she saw Casey standing by the water cooler with two other coworkers. Casey was talking in a low voice, but she caught her name. She kept walking. But as she passed, she heard Casey say, "If she can toss a frisbee, she can stand through a shift." The other woman laughed. She kept walking. She went straight to Amy's office. Her hands were shaking. "I need to transfer out. I can't do this anymore." Amy looked at her for a long moment. She nodded slowly. "I'll see what I can do." 2 weeks later, the transfer came through. She moved to a different location across town. It was a longer commute, but she didn't care. She needed to be away from Casey. She needed to be away from the whispers and the sticky notes and the chair swaps. On her last day at that office, she walked past Casey's desk without looking at her. Casey said, "Good luck. Hope your new boss is as easy to fool as Amy." She didn't answer. She just kept walking. The new location was smaller, quieter. No one knew about her disability unless she told them. She didn't tell them. She kept her head down, did her work, and went home. Her pain levels settled back to normal, her normal. The constant fear of being watched faded, but it never fully disappeared. She still catches herself checking her rearview mirror when she drives. She still hesitates before using the handicap placard. She still feels a knot in her stomach when a coworker asks her how her weekend was. That story made me realize that no matter how careful you are, someone out there is always watching. Casey didn't care about the truth. She cared about winning, and she didn't care who she hurt to do it. That kind of obsessive behavior reminded me of another story I came across. A woman who worked in an office for 9 years kept her personal life completely separate. She never talked about her husband, her twin daughters, her house, her hobbies. She believed in a clear separation between work and home. She'd redirect questions, change the subject, focus on work stuff. It wasn't that she was ashamed, she just didn't want her coworkers knowing every detail of her life. She wanted to be judged on her work, not on whether she had kids or a dog or a nice house. Then Melinda got hired. Melinda was the office snoop. She spent weeks getting close to everyone, but it wasn't because she was friendly. She was collecting information, ammunition. She wanted to hold things over people's heads. Most people gave her something, a complaint about a spouse, a financial struggle, a health issue. But this woman never gave Melinda anything. She just said, "I like to keep work and home separate," and moved on. Melinda didn't like that. She took it as a challenge. For months, Melinda watched. She took notes. She followed this woman's car after work one day just to see where she lived. She dug through old company directories, cross-referenced names, found her Facebook profile. The woman used a shortened version of her first name and her married name on Facebook, but Melinda used white pages to piece it together. She found photos that were shared publicly, photos of the woman with her twin daughters at a softball game, photos of her kayaking, photos of her house. Melinda printed them out. Then came the Friday lunch that changed everything. They were all in the break room. Melinda walked in with a folder under her arm, looking like the cat who got the goldfish. She set the folder on the table and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "So I did some research. Guess what I found out about our little mystery coworker?" The woman's stomach dropped. She tried to deflect. "Melinda, can we talk about this later?" No, everyone wants to know," Melinda said. She opened the folder. Pictures spilled out. She's married. Her name is Alexandra, but she goes by Ali. She has twin daughters. They're like 6 or 7. She has a golden retriever. She lives in a house with a white picket fence, I'm not even kidding. And she plays softball, kayaks, and mountain climbs. She's on Facebook, I found her. The room went silent. The woman looked around. Some of her coworkers looked uncomfortable. A few looked curious. One woman, her work best friend Lucy, looked betrayed. You have twins, why didn't you ever tell me? The woman tried to explain. She said she valued her privacy. She said she didn't want her personal life to affect her professional relationships, but the damage was done. Melinda had broken the seal. From that day on, everyone started asking her questions. How are the kids? Did you go kayaking this weekend? Can I see a picture of your dog? It was constant. She couldn't escape it. She went to her boss, a man named Hank. She explained what happened. Hank sighed. He said, look, Melinda shouldn't have done that. But you have to understand, people here are curious. You've been here 9 years and no one knew you had a family. That's weird, she said. It's not weird to want privacy. Hank shrugged. It's a small office, people talk, just go with it, it'll blow over. It didn't blow over. Melinda started digging into other people's lives too. She found out that a man in accounting, Rob, had been fired from his previous job for embezzlement. That wasn't relevant to his current job. He'd served his time, paid restitution, but Melinda told everyone anyway. Rob quit within a week. She found out that another woman, Sarah, was going through a divorce and had a restraining order against her ex-husband. Melinda made a comment about staying safe from violent exes in front of the whole team. Sarah cried in the bathroom. People started whispering about the woman who had twins. They said she was hiding something. They said she must be ashamed of her family. They said she was probably having an affair. The rumors got worse and worse. She stopped eating lunch in the break room. She started eating at her desk, facing the wall, headphones in. One day, she found a note on her desk. It said, "We know you're hiding something. What is it?" The handwriting was shaky, like someone was trying to disguise it. She crumpled it up and threw it away. She didn't tell anyone. Then Melinda took it a step further. She found out that the woman's husband had a previous marriage. She found the ex-wife on social media and started messaging her, asking for the real story. The ex-wife contacted the woman's husband, furious. He came home that night pale and shaking. "Why is someone from your office messaging my ex-wife?" The woman finally snapped. She went to HR. She filed a formal complaint. She brought evidence, the printed photos, the note on the desk, the Facebook messages she'd found when Melinda accidentally friended her husband under a fake account. HR interviewed Melinda. Melinda denied everything. She said she was just being friendly, that she didn't realize the woman was so private. She said she accidentally found the photos because they appeared in her newsfeed. HR ruled in Melinda's favor. They called it a personality conflict and gave both of them a written warning. The woman was furious. She considered quitting, but she had twins, a mortgage, and a golden retriever who needed expensive vet visits. She couldn't afford to walk out. So she stayed, but she started documenting everything. Every comment Melinda made, every time Melinda walked past her desk and stared, every time she found a note, she kept a spreadsheet. She saved screenshots. She recorded conversations on her phone. Even though it was illegal in her state, she didn't care. She was building a case. A month later, Melinda slipped up. She sent a group email about a project and accidentally included a message she'd typed to herself. "Make sure she fails. She doesn't deserve to be here." The woman forwarded the email to HR and the CEO. She included her entire documentation folder. She said, "Either she goes or I file a lawsuit for a hostile work environment." HR had no choice. Melinda was fired that afternoon. The woman watched her clean out her desk, red-faced, not looking at anyone. On her way out, Melinda walked past the woman's desk and whispered, "This isn't over." But it was over, at least in that office. Things settled down. People stopped asking about her family. They kept their distance, but they were polite. She stayed for another 2 years, then got a better job offer and left. She never told her new coworkers about her past. She kept her personal life locked up tight. And she never, ever accepted a friend request from a coworker again. That story taught me something. Some people don't care about boundaries. They see privacy as a challenge, not a right. And once they cross that line, it's almost impossible to uncross it. You can report them, you can document, you can get them fired, but you can't ever get back that feeling of safety. I thought about that a lot after my wife's coworker showed up with a key to our house. I thought about how I had trusted her completely, and she had handed that trust to someone else without asking. I thought about the hours I'd spent wondering what else she'd told him, what other private moments of ours she'd shared. I thought about the way she said, "He's just a friend," as if that made it okay, but it wasn't okay, and I was done pretending it was. That reminded me of another story I read around the same time. A woman who had chronic pain who worked part-time at a place where everyone knew she had a disability. She had the placard on her car, the canes for bad days, all the paperwork filed. But her coworker Casey didn't believe her. Casey wanted a promotion and saw the OOP as competition, even though OOP had made it clear she didn't want to move up. It started small. Casey would make comments like, "You don't look like you're in pain," or "I saw you carrying groceries last week. That must be hard for someone with your condition." OOP brushed it off at first. She thought it was ignorance, not malice, but then Casey started following her. Not in a creepy, hiding in the bushes way. More like she'd notice OOP leaving the office and then conveniently leave at the same time. She'd park a few spaces away in the grocery store lot and watch. She'd take her phone out and record. Just quick clips: OOP walking to her car without a cane on a good day, OOP carrying a bag of dog food, OOP laughing with a friend outside a coffee shop. Casey compiled them. Then one Monday morning, Casey walked into Amy's office and closed the door. She handed over the videos. "See," she said. "She's faking. She walks fine. She carries heavy stuff. She doesn't need accommodations. She's just lazy and wants special treatment." Amy watched the videos. She looked at Casey and said, "I need to think about this." Then she called OOP into the office. OOP walked in. Amy was pale. She closed the door and said, "Casey brought me something. I'm going to show you and I need you to stay calm." She played the videos. OOP watched herself at the grocery store at the park getting out of her car. She felt sick. Her hands started shaking. "That's from last Sunday," she said. "That was a low-pain day. I was at a 4. I don't use my cane on 4 days. I told you that in my accommodation forms." Amy nodded. "I know, I read them, but Casey doesn't believe you." OOP asked if Amy believed Casey. Amy said, "I believe you." "But this is serious. She's been following you." OOP asked if she could report Casey to HR. Amy said she already had. She'd called them that morning before showing the videos. HR told Amy to send them the footage and to keep Casey away from OOP. They scheduled a meeting for Wednesday. That Wednesday, OOP sat across from HR manager Linda, Amy, and Casey. Casey was smirking. Linda said, "Casey, you took video of a coworker outside the workplace without her consent. Do you understand that's a violation of company policy?" Casey frowned. "I was just proving she's not disabled. She walks fine. She lifts stuff. She's lying to get special treatment." OOP spoke up. "I have a medical diagnosis. I have a physical exam from my doctor. I have paperwork. You have no right to follow me." Linda held up a hand. "Casey, we're going to need you to turn over your phone and any copies of those videos." Casey's face went red. "You can't do that. It's my personal property." "This is a workplace investigation," Linda said. "You use company time and a company parking lot to record a coworker. The videos were shared with a manager. That makes it part of our investigation. If you refuse, that's insubordination." Casey handed over the phone. She was fuming. Linda said they'd be in touch. The next week, Casey was put on administrative leave. OOP thought it was over. She thought justice would be swift. But then Casey came back. She'd been given a written warning and reassigned to a different team. She wasn't fired. HR said the videos didn't violate any specific policy about stalking, just about recording without consent, and even that was a gray area because they were taken in public places. OOP was livid. She went back to Amy. "She followed me. She recorded me. She tried to say I'm faking a disability. And she gets a warning." Amy sighed. "I tried." But Linda said there's no clear rule against what she did. She said if you want to press charges, you'd have to go to the police. So OOP went to the police. She drove to the precinct, sat down with an officer, and explained everything. She showed him the videos that HR had given her copies of. She showed him Casey's messages. She told him she felt unsafe. The officer looked bored. He said, "Ma'am, this is a workplace issue. We can't do anything about someone filming you in public. Illegal, and unless she makes a direct threat, we can't charge her with stalking." OOP said, "She did it to prove I'm not disabled. That's discrimination." The officer shrugged. "That's a civil matter. Talk to a lawyer." She walked out of the station in tears. She called her husband. He said, "Find a lawyer, we'll sue." She found a lawyer who specialized in disability discrimination and workplace harassment. The lawyer listened to the whole story, watched the videos, and said, "This is a solid case. But it's going to take time and money. Are you prepared for that?" OOP said yes. She filed a complaint with the EEOC. She also filed a restraining order against Casey, citing the stalking. The judge granted a temporary order. Casey was furious. She started posting vague threats on social media. OOP's lawyer sent a cease and desist. For 2 months, OOP lived in fear. She changed her route to work. She stopped going to the grocery store alone. She installed cameras outside her house. Every time a car slowed down, she froze. Then one evening, she got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of her house taken from across the street. The caption said, "You think a piece of paper will stop me?" She called the police. They did a drive-by but didn't see anyone. They said they couldn't do more without proof of who sent it. She showed them the number. They traced it to a burner phone, dead end. OOP's lawyer filed a motion to extend the restraining order and added a charge of witness intimidation. Casey was served at work. She had to appear in court. The day of the hearing, OOP sat in the courtroom with her husband. Casey walked in with her own lawyer. The judge listened to both sides. OOP's lawyer presented the videos, the texts, the documentation. Casey's lawyer said, "My client was just being a concerned coworker. She had reasonable doubts. The videos were taken in public. There's no proof she sent the threatening text." The judge looked at Casey. "Miss Casey, you are ordered to stay at least 500 feet from the plaintiff, her home, and her workplace. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Is that clear?" Casey nodded. She didn't look at OOP. The order was extended for a year. Casey was fired from the company after the EEOC complaint triggered a full investigation. The company settled with OOP for a year's salary and a promise to implement new policies about recording coworkers. OOP still works there. She still has chronic pain. She still uses her cane on bad days. But now she has a different team, a locked door, and a security camera aimed right at the parking lot. She said on Reddit that she still checks over her shoulder, but she feels a little safer. And she learned that sometimes the people who claim to be looking out for you are really just looking for a way to bring you down. That story hit close to home, because my wife's coworker didn't just have a key to our house, he had taken pictures of our kitchen and sent them to her. He knew where we kept the spare remote. He knew our dog's name. He knew what time I left for work. I had asked her weeks ago to change the locks, and she said she would. She never did. I found out later she'd given him the new code before she even told me. That was the part that broke me, not the key, not the dinner, not the argument. The fact that she kept choosing him over me even when I asked her to stop, even when I begged. I didn't scream when I found out about the code. I just sat down on the couch and stared at the wall. She asked if I was okay. I said, I don't know who you are anymore. She said I was overreacting. She said he was just a friend. She said I was being controlling. I said, he has a key to our house. I didn't. You gave it to him without telling me. How is that not a betrayal? She didn't have an answer. That night I slept on the couch. The next morning I called a locksmith and changed the locks myself. She got mad. She said I was being childish. I said, no, I'm protecting my home. She hasn't talked to me in 3 days. She's been staying at her sister's. I'm still in the house with the new locks, wondering if our marriage is over, and wondering if I'm the one who ended it. Number, I didn't scream when I found out about the code. I just sat down on the couch and stared at the wall. She asked if I was okay. I said, I don't know who you are anymore. She said I was overreacting. She said he was just a friend. She said I was being controlling. I said, he has a key to our house. I didn't. You gave it to him without telling me. How is that not a betrayal? She didn't have an answer. That night I slept on the couch. The next morning I called a locksmith and changed the locks myself. She got mad. She said I was being childish. I said, no, I'm protecting my home. She hasn't talked to me in 3 days. She's been staying at her sister's. I'm still in the house with the new locks, wondering if our marriage is over, and wondering if I'm the one who ended it. Around that same time, I found a story online that made me feel less crazy. This woman, she worked at a company for 9 years. 9 years. And she kept her personal life completely separate. No photos on her desk. No talk about her husband or kids. She used a shortened version of her name on Facebook, Ali instead of Alexandra, and she never ever discussed home at work. Her coworkers thought she was mysterious. Some of them found it weird, but most just accepted it. She'd worked her way up over the years and she was good at her job. She liked the separation. She said she enjoyed being an adult at work, talking about things other than JoJo Siwa and the Kardashians. She had twin daughters and a dog and a nice house, but none of that was anyone's business. Then Melinda was hired. Melinda was the office snoop. She spent weeks getting close to everyone, collecting information like it was currency. She wanted leverage. She wanted to know things about people that they didn't want shared. The woman, let's call her Alex, she never gave Melinda anything. She redirected questions. She changed the subject. She stayed pleasant but closed. It drove Melinda crazy. One Friday, Melinda came into work looking like she'd won the lottery. At lunch, she announced to the whole break room that Alex was married with 2 daughters, a dog, and a nice house. That she played softball, kayaked, and mountain climbed. That she was on Facebook, even though her posts were private. Melinda had used White Pages to figure out Alex's married name, cross-referenced it with her shortened first name, and found enough profile photos that were shared with mutual friends to piece everything together. She stood there smug like she'd uncovered a crime. Alex didn't react. She just said, I keep my work and personal life separate. That's not a secret, it's a boundary. Melinda laughed. She said, what, you think you're too good for us? You think we're not worthy of knowing who you really are? Alex said, no, I just don't think my coworkers need to know everything about me. It didn't end there. Melinda started making comments every day. How are the twins today, Ali? Is your husband still letting you work late? I saw you posting about kayaking. Guess your back isn't that bad after all. Alex reported Melinda to HR. She had documentation, she had dates, she had witnesses, but HR said, it's just workplace gossip. We'll talk to her. They did. Melinda toned it down for a week. Then she went right back. A few months later, Alex found out she'd been assigned to a huge, important project with Melinda. The boss never handed those out unless he trusted you completely. Alex had been waiting years for this kind of recognition. But when she got the email with the project details, something was off. The timeline was unrealistic. The resources were half of what they needed, and Melinda was listed as co-lead. Alex went to her boss. She said, I don't think Melinda and I can work together professionally. There's a history of harassment. Her boss sighed. He said, I know, but she's the only one with availability, and she's been asking for a shot at a leadership role. I need you to make this work. Alex didn't make it work. Melinda changed documents without telling her. She scheduled meetings behind her back. She sent client emails from Alex's email draft folder, making it look like Alex had written them wrong. She was sabotaging the project. Alex went back to HR. This time she had screenshots. She had timeline evidence. She had emails where Melinda had excluded her from decisions and taken credit for her work. HR said, we'll open an investigation. 2 weeks later, Alex was called into a meeting. HR said, we reviewed everything. We don't see any evidence of wrongdoing. It seems like a personality conflict. We're reassigning you to a different department. Alex was moved to a smaller office with less responsibility. Melinda kept the project lead role. She walked past Alex's new desk every morning with a smile. Alex said on Reddit that she started looking for a new job that day. She said she learned the hard way that privacy isn't about hiding something, it's about protecting yourself from people who will weaponize anything they can. She ended her post by saying, I still don't talk about my personal life at work, but now I also don't trust HR. I thought about that story a lot after my wife left because she had been giving her coworker information about our lives for months, not just the keys she told him about our struggles, our finances, our arguments. I found out later that she'd been venting to him about me, about how controlling I was, about how I didn't trust her. Of course I didn't trust her. She was giving our house key to a man I'd never met. I texted her sister. I asked if she was okay. Her sister said, she's fine, she's hurt, you need to give her space. I said, she gave our house key to a coworker. Her sister said, she told me. She said he needed a place to stay during the renovation. I said, he needed a place to stay for a week. We have a finished basement. She didn't even ask me. Her sister was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I don't know what to tell you. She's my sister. I said, she's my wife. The next day, I got a call from my mother-in-law. She wanted to talk. She said she was worried about both of us. She said my wife was crying a lot. She said I needed to be more understanding. I said she gave a man I don't know a key to our house without telling me. How is that something I need to understand? My mother-in-law said, he's just a friend from work. He's gay. He's not a threat. I said, I don't care if he's gay. I care that she didn't tell me. She said, maybe she didn't tell you because she knew you'd overreact. I hung up. That night, I sat in the living room with all the lights off. I was thinking about boundaries, about what they really mean. About how many people think boundaries are just walls you put up to keep people out, when really they're fences that let you decide who gets in. My wife had let someone in, and she'd locked me out. Next morning, I drove to her sister's house. I knocked on the door. My wife answered. She looked tired. She was wearing an old sweatshirt I'd bought her 3 years ago. I said, can we talk? She said, I don't know. I said, I love you. I want to work this out, but I need you to understand why I'm hurt. She started crying. She said, I didn't think it was a big deal. He just needed a place, and I knew you'd say no. I said, why would I say no? She said, because you don't trust me. You've never trusted me. I said, I trusted you until you gave a stranger our key. She said, he's not a stranger. He's my coworker. He's my friend. I said, if he's your friend, why didn't you introduce us? Why didn't you tell me? Why did I have to find out over dinner? She didn't answer. We stood in the doorway for a long time. Her sister was in the kitchen, pretending not to listen. I could hear the TV in the background, some reality show. I said, I changed the locks. I'm not giving you a key until we see a counselor. She said, you can't just decide that. I said, I already did. She said, that's not okay. I said, neither was giving our house to someone I've never met. She stepped back. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. She said, I didn't give him the house. I gave him a key. I said, same thing. I went home. I didn't know if we were going to make it. I didn't know if I wanted to make it. I loved her, but love isn't enough when trust is gone. A few days later, I found out she'd been talking to a lawyer. She wanted to know what her rights were. She wanted to know if she could get back into the house. Lawyer told her she had a legal right because her name was on the deed. She called me and said, I'm coming home tomorrow and I'm bringing my key. I said, I changed the locks. She said, I'll call a locksmith. I said, I'll call the police. She said, you wouldn't. I said, try me. She came home the next day. She had her sister drive her. She stood on the front porch and rang the doorbell. I didn't answer. She called my phone. I picked up. She said, let me in. I said, we need to talk. Not like this, with a counselor. She said, I'm not going to counseling. I said, then you're not coming in. She called me a name. She said, this is my house too. I said, not anymore. I know that was harsh. I know it was possessive, but I was scared. I was scared of her and scared of what she'd done and scared of what it meant. She left. She went back to her sister's. She texted me later that night, I'm filing for divorce. I didn't respond. I sat in the dark and stared at my phone. I thought about the key. I thought about the dinner. I thought about how something so small could break something so big. I'm still in that house. The locks are still new. And I'm still wondering if I overreacted or if I finally set a boundary I should have set years ago. I don't know the answer. I just know that trust, once broken, doesn't come back with an apology. It comes back with action, and she never took any, so maybe I'm the villain in this story, or maybe I'm just a guy who finally said no. Either way, I'm sleeping alone tonight, and that's the part that hurts the most. And that's where I'll leave it because I don't have an ending yet. Maybe I never will.